about the who in your business. Who can you partner with to serve your shared clientele better? And it doesn't always mean it has to be an official partnership, although that can be great. But sometimes this power of a partnership cannot be beat. If you are the right fit, and that's definitely an important thing to think about. It's not dissimilar to being married for sure. I think that's very true. There's going to be ups and downs, very, very much so, right? And I think it's key to define the structure, and then you both agree to it.
Welcome to the Damn Good Designer podcast. Join hosts Cheryl and Liz, the visionary and integrator balancing all the moving parts of a full-service interior design firm. Get ready for a wild ride as they challenge the norms, challenge the industry, and challenge you with damn good truths about what success looks like today. Now your hosts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Damn Good Designer podcast. Today we are talking to two of the fab professionals who were in the design paradigm last year about their rather unique business structure and some of the things they took away from the program. So let me introduce you to Jay Volz and Michele Doyle. Actually, Michele with a 1L too, if anybody is taking notes. I had to really work on that last year to make sure that I was sending the right information to the right Michele. Their firm together is called Bluefoot Architecture and Design, and they are based in Washington State. So they are way over there, is what we say in Florida. They're over there. So we're going to dig right in here and talk about a few questions, a few things. And the big thing that I really want to talk to you guys about is that you have a very unique business structure. I know that it's come together with, some challenges like any types of business structure and that kind of thing. But before we get into any of that sort of thing, tell me about, because everyone's wondering what the heck I'm talking about. Tell me about your business structure and how long you've been working together and doing this, because I think it's not been all that long.
No, yeah. So we've been actually working in our respective industries, interior design and architecture. I've been in interior design since 2005, and Jay started in architecture in 2009. Yeah. So we were working independently in our own businesses up until 3 years ago when we formed a partnership. The way we met is I established an office in our downtown corridor, and I needed someone to sublet an office. And I'd met Jay through our kids who happened to go to the same high school together. And I encouraged him to move in and work his practice in an office instead of out of his home, which he eventually did. And for many years, he had his clients and I had my clients, and we didn't really interact professionally very much. And then right around maybe the year before COVID hit, we started sharing more projects, and referring each other, passing each other business back and forth. And it was sort of working. And he often joked that we should just become partners. But I'm a very type A control freak, and I don't trust anybody. And I think he's probably a little bit the same.
Really?
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. As Jay rolls his eyes.
Jay comes across, though, as very laid back, though, Michele. He comes across as a little more laid back. So
I have my moments,
on the other hand, I could tell. Yeah, I'm sure you do. But you come across as a little laid back, and then Michele, I can tell we're kindred spirits.
Yes, we are.
So
well,
go ahead.
And Jay has his personality is very laid back, but when it comes to his work and his processes, he's pretty regimented. And I remember when we first started, probably on both sides, there was a little bit of heel digging. We liked the way we did our work. And so trying to figure out how, even just before we became a formal partnership, just figuring out how we can work together so that we were supporting each other's businesses to the benefit of our clients and our partners that were the contractors and subs and stuff. So anyway, it was sometime during COVID, where we decided to make our partnership formal, create a formal partnership. But even that was with some trepidation.
Yeah, that was about a year process.
Yeah, it took us about a year, because he had his clients, I had my clients, we had clients that we shared. And, we kind of thought, we'll form our own company, but Jay will still go off and do stuff on his own, and I'll still go off and do stuff on my own, and we'll just run 3 companies. Well, that was a massive mistake.
That lasted about a month.
Yeah.
Well, you're like, this is huge. We can't do this. It's too much work. And so we started the process of trying to just meld our two. I call it building an airplane while flying, and it's literally how it felt, just building an airplane while flying. We were understaffed. We were overwhelmed. We had too many projects, and
did you
a lot of work
employees?
to do in the business model itself.
Yeah. No, Michelle had an employee I didn't, and we brought her along, and then we very quickly hired a couple more.
Yeah, we hired a drafter that Jay had sometimes used as a 1099 when he got really busy. So we actually extended him an offer of employment, and he accepted. And then eventually we brought in a new operations manager. Our old operations manager now just does 3D modeling, and we have 2 design assistants. And then we still have another 1099 drafting company that we use. So we're growing, but we have to use a worksheet to justify this, but I think what we feel like we need is like a full-time project manager would be wonderful. But right now we're just not there. But
we need a Liz.
We need a Liz.
Yeah. You may not have her.
We do.
That's why she's not on this call. No.
But we've been together for officially for 3 years now as one company. And I think we started working with you a little over a year ago.
Yeah. Our 3-year anniversary is actually next month.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. It's good reason to celebrate. You need any reason to celebrate. So here's a question that I didn't prepare you for because I told you I did prepare you for the fact, and you have been working with me for a little over a year, so you should know that I sometimes come out of left field. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about things, and I'm thinking about how because it's, as you both know, I work with an architect quite a bit, also a freelance architect that we work with, and he's actually now moved. He's since moved out of the area, but he still has his Florida license, and we work with him quite a bit on projects. And I've always thought it would be great. I did have a graduate architect for a little while, and that didn't work out too good. The egos were too combative and that sort of thing, and everything was okay, but I think it was a youth thing also, the youthful part of it, but on his part, not my part because I'm old. But but what happens when you disagree? I mean, what happens? Like, do you go to your separate corners, or what really happens because you're both, obviously nice people and all of that, but it's tough to work with people. I mean, Liz is not my partner in the financial end of it or whatever in a sense. I mean, I think she is sometimes, but legally on paper she's not a partner, but yet she is a partner. I mean, she is my work wife, and we disagree a fair amount about some things, not major things, but something's happened. So and sometimes it's people ask about things like that. So when you're actually really really partners like this, what do you do when you disagree? How do you resolve that? An issue?
After Jay rolls his eyes, no. We actually disagree quite a bit, I think.
We do,
but in a professional way. I think when we first started working very closely together, we had to give each other feedback, like after client meetings and stuff. We'd say, okay, it's cool that we didn't agree on these things, but here's how we need to approach this in front of the client. Like, we need to come.
We never do this in front of the client.
Yeah. So, but if we toe over the line a little bit, we immediately lock eyes, and we make each other kind of visibly aware, like, okay, this is something we need to take offline or whatever. So we've sort of established or developed that instinct with one another, because we don't always agree. But I actually think it's for the benefit of the client when we don't. So it's a matter of how do you present very disparate ideas from a design approach to a client who is really looking for leadership and direction. And there are definitely instances where I will defer to Jay because of his extensive expertise in architecture, or will defer to the craftsmen who have to implement an idea. And then I think there are times where he will defer to my ideas as an interior designer. So there's some mutual respect there. But I think that the instances where we disagree are actually ultimately positive. I think in the very beginning, we had to learn how to handle them so that we didn't upset the apple cart with our clients and make them feel like we weren't going to support them. And
I won't say there was never a misstep in the middle of that.
No, they don't.
And that's how we are. That's how we are with our team in general. Even part of the team that's not part of the employee of in detail is very. We make it very clear. And when sometimes we get a person that is new to our cabinet maker that we've worked with for 25 years, just about 25 years. And that person will, hasn't been instructed on how the game is played. And either they'll either say something that might impact the countertop people, and we're all a team. And that's what I emphasize. And if there's a problem, I say, you call me or you call Liz, and that's what we have to do. But you do not get into it with a client. And God forbid that you don't start popping off to the client about what should have been done or what needed to be done or this wasn't done because of that. And I think that team approach has been a very big deal to me. I mean, we have a whole subcontractor, code of conduct, so to speak. We're actually changing the name of that because we feel like that it's not as receptive to that, because it sounds like they're being talked to like their kids. So it just, it's just really just something I've had forever, and I never thought about it until someone said that. I was like, well, I think you're right about that. So, but that's one of the big things on there is not to bring it into the client realm, that we take our disagreements, offline, like you said. So I think that's really important with that. I mean, tell me about a specific challenge that you faced doing this, like with that has, other than just the normal things that you would expect, from this happening, because sometimes, let's face it, architects and designers don't always agree about some things. I mean, that's the truth, especially if you are very involved in the architectural end of it. I always feel like I know my lane for the most part, but what I like about working with Ivo is that I can, he's okay with me designing a home, and then he will make the exterior work with whatever I design within limits of the site and all of that, of course. But I mean, he likes to do what he likes to do, so it works out kind of well. And I don't get into how he wants to do other things with the structure itself. I'm really very focused on the interior. But not all architects are that way. I mean, a lot of architects want to control everything, and they're looking at designers like they're decorators. And obviously
I'm
you don't think that, Jay, because I know you.
I'm gonna let him start.
Yeah, it's not easy giving some of that up, that's for sure. But there's mutual respect between both of us. Sometimes we overlap, and it's always from a good place and good ideas, and a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth, and it tends to work out well, especially for the clients.
Yeah, one of the things we do to kind of tee up our clients, especially when we're still all in the getting to know you phase, and we're developing that relationship and the trust, is Jay will usually be the first one to pipe in that says, we are not married. Like, we're partners, we're business partners, owner. We're not married, although you might think sometimes we are, the way we might communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So he'll kind of make light of it, but it always establishes that idea with the client that we're professionals, but we're not the same person. We have, and I think it's an advantage that we might come at things from a little bit different perspective. But the one thing I have to say to Jay, to Jay's credit, and the reason why I think we're partners, is because he's more than just an architect. I think he's a highly creative with great ideas and a great sense of style and aesthetic, and there's other things there too. But I respect him as a designer, not just an architect.
That's interesting. And I think that not all architects are necessarily that way. I mean, I have worked with so many architects over the years, and some really aren't that interested in the interior or interested in, cabinetry elevations and bathroom design and kitchen design. I mean, there's probably a lot around here that are not that interested in that. They're much more interested in, maximizing the site, the exterior, a lot of the things that are, that just are not really the detail work, I guess, on the inside, in terms of not the architectural details, but the details of right down to a knob and a handle and, whatever, those kinds of things, or what kind of appliances are going in a kitchen or all that. So what I've always told clients is that every architect is just like a designer. Everyone has their they might all be equally skilled. They might all have, they're trained and all of that. You may know everything. And if you're a designer and you went through a traditional program, then you're going to have a lot of commercial skills, not as much residential skills. We've come to find out that schools don't teach residential quite as much, but you're still going to have that. But yet you have typically a something that you like doing more than something else, right? And so I think it's interesting to note that you really embrace the whole creative process, because I have worked with architects, and usually I will say that they have had a lot of time in building schools and hospitality. There's not been a lot of creative. That's not been their trajectory, so, and then all of a sudden they're designing a home for a friend or something, and then that's when it comes out that that's not really their ballywick. And it's not that they're not skilled in it. I think it's just not really, it doesn't interest them as much. More so.
No, I think.
Well, my mentor was a really, really good residential architect, and I was fortunate enough to get hooked up with him. And residential is so much more personal than commercial. It's so much more rewarding. And we used to do everything.
Yeah.
We used to do interiors.
That's great to be able to, if you've had a really strong residential role model or mentor in that, because I don't know, maybe it's just my situation that we've dealt with so many people, and I think there's a lot of money in commercial, perhaps, maybe that in our area, because we're in a smaller town, maybe that's part of it, why so many architects here are more bent on what we find, and Jay, we've talked about this before in TDP, is there's a lot of residential designers, or what they're called that. I don't know really why they're called that, but around here they're called that really are just doing AutoCAD and that sort of thing. And some of them are good, and some of them are not so good. And so, that's where I get plans more so than an architect. There's a couple of really fine architects around here that I work with every now and again. But for the most part, I would say the plans that come across my desk that need the most help are actually from people that are maybe not, I don't know if it's not as trained, because I've also seen some that are really good. So it really depends on the person, on who it is. But I think that's part of the difference. It may be a smaller city. Perhaps there's not as many architects to choose from in general.
Yeah.
We do have that here too.
I mean,
and sometimes that's all you need, right? That's all you need is a residential designer, but we're trying to get into the more refined,
and especially if you're hiring somebody, if a firm like ours, it's not a bad thing, because we do a lot of that, and I know where to stay away from and what I'm not going to do. But I have enjoyed working with an architect, more on projects and bringing him on board, and I think it's a great thing for designers to be able, to do more. But let me ask you this, because you mentioned about the really it's for the benefit of the client. And that's exactly what I say, y'all, is with Liz and me and Libby and Jen. We're a design team. And so we're all involved. Like, there's not one job that is just mine or just Libby's or there might be smaller jobs that are just involved with just Liz or Libby or something, or there might be plan reviews or something that I'm doing alone. But overall, on full service design, we're doing the whole thing. And I thought about the other day, and I'm like, we should be charging even more, because they're getting 4 designers for the price of 1. So have you guys thought about that? It just popped into my mind just as you're talking about that. Like, and in your case, you're getting an architect and an interior designer, so that's got to be equal to 4 designers, right? Or something like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking, do you factor that into your fees? I mean, do you factor that into your fees because you're both looking at it? Because really, it's a great selling point, obviously.
I feel like we're still evolving in our fees. Working with you is kind of open. We had tried a couple times before working with you and TDP on flat fee models, and it's always been a struggle for us, because some of the projects that we have, and a good majority of them, are very high end, and everything is custom made, everything down. I mean, there isn't anything that is just purchased, right? And so oftentimes we have a design that we start with, but as we move through implementation, opportunities will come up, and we'll say, oh, let's go work with this metal fabricator and create this structure with this, or let's go work with this artist on custom wallpaper, because, this is what we really want for this space. Or, hey, we could create this, super cool facade for this fireplace with this type of material, but it's all hand applied. I mean, so a lot of those things happen to, kind of come up. So for us, we're like, okay, there's probably an aspect of it that you can say, yeah, for this part of the design through maybe design development, you can do a fixed fee. But then there's that 10 to 15% design that's remaining during construction, where you go, this is where we take advantage of these opportunities, and you can't fix fee that.
But if you think about the fixed fee, it's you can do it, just like you said, to a particular point, to the point where you're not going to have flex in it, or you build something in to where if you are working with somebody that you're either obviously selling the product, which is what we're going to do, or there is additional add-on to that. See, I always think that there's always a way to do it, but here's the thing. We do hourly also with a particular type of client or whatever. It's not like every single one of our jobs are that way. They're too diverse. So you have to figure out what you have to do. The key is being able to project the income, because you want to be able to know that you're locked on to this job. And even though a lot of designers say, well, my client's never going to leave me, I am everything to them, and they're not going to leave me. I mean, the truth is that we've got like 75 pages of Facebook stories that say that's sometimes people are surprised. And so for me, I need to know that I can pay for my team. I need to know that I can say no to those next 3 jobs and be able to have enough on the books to know that we're in good shape. Then if a smaller job, or if a job, an old client, that's always been hourly and they're comfortable with that, hey, no problem, because I'm certainly not worried about them going somewhere else. And then it is going to be something. But I do understand what you're talking about if you're doing a job, and that's why it's so important to know what you bring to the table and what your scopes typically are and what the scope is for that particular client. I do think there's ways to still address that. But, the thing about it is if it's working and you're not laying awake at night worried about paying your team or something like that, which is really where my whole project pricing concept came from 10 years ago, was because I can't stand that kind of aggravation, because I will pay everyone and everything before I pay myself, and that's not always good. That's why I don't do all that profit first stuff, because I'm going to be paying the employees first. I'm going to be paying, and I know you guys feel the same way in terms of your loyalty to your people. So if you can project out the income, it doesn't probably make as much difference to you on every job, especially if you know one that is going to be a lot of bespoke items and pieces going into it. I mean, I think that makes logical sense to it, but you could still do a flat fee up to a certain point, up to that, to whatever point that makes sense. I think that's something that we're slowly moving into, and we're being pretty selective and careful about which projects we say, well, we're going to fix fee this versus, hourly. And so we are having some success with the flat fee projects, and also being very mindful of when something is out of scope to say, yes, we would love to do that for you, but it wasn't part of our original agreement. Can I give you a proposal for that work? And so just trying to stay mindful of that. I think the hard part is with the volume of projects that we're juggling is keeping track of which ones were flat fee and which ones are hourly, in terms of how we track our time. And so like I said, it's a work in process, because we're sort of slowly and carefully moving into that model where it makes the most sense for us. But it's an interesting question, about the value of our time, because, and Jay and I had talked about this, because when we were first partners, I was billing out at a higher hourly rate than he was. And it was, through my encouragement to have him start charging more, there's always that, fear that when you raise your prices, people aren't going to want to work with you. And that's not the case. And so just working to overcome that, initial reservations, like, oh, I've never charged that much before. Okay, well, but this is your value. And and Jay is as or more valuable as I am. He's got higher standards. Even though I hold myself to high standards, it's not required by law, but they are to him, right? And so, he should be billing at my rate at the very least. Or when we're looking at pricing out projects, we understand that his value is every bit as high or as good as mine or more, just based on the kind of liability and the work that he does. So, right.
At the very least, the additional income coming in frees up some of our time to do other things like marketing or coaching or other things important to the business that maybe we just didn't focus on. At least I didn't focus on at my old hourly rate, because I was too focused on, getting money in.
Making the dollar.
Having enough income, just to keep the lights on. Yeah.
to keep it into it. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that also with this idea of bringing a design team, whether it's a design architecture team or design team like we bring to the table, really is a mindset thing that you do need to charge more. I mean, Liz and I have been talking about that a lot lately because since she's remote and we're some meetings, in the past, sometimes there's been all three of us at the meetings, and we've now said we're not doing that anymore because it's not, we can't really justify all three of us being in a meeting. So we're going through our processes again a little bit, and I'll send all this to the mastermind people too when we get it worked out, because it's not changing a lot, but we are adapting a little bit more to trying to be more conscious of that capacity that we have, because we're busy too. And while we do sell on the value of having a team is more valuable than just one person, I love it. I mean, that's why I still do it, because I could probably do just as well working out of my home and without all the overhead and everything else, money-wise. But I love it. I love the team approach. It's what keeps me relevant, and I love getting input. I love bouncing ideas off of people and all of that. I thrive on that. But not everybody feels that way. But I do think that you also have to be careful about making sure that when you and Jay are working together, that you're conscious of how much time each of you are spending, especially if you're doing a flat fee, so that you're not eating away into that profit. If you're not charging double the rate or twice the rate or something like that, if you're not factoring that into your flat fee, I mean, I think that's really important to consider. And, and that's something we think about all the time. We look at all of our hours, not just mine.
I think we do factor that, but there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind as I was listening to you. Is there's still a lot that Jay and I can learn from each other. So there are times where it does, where there's a real benefit beyond just how much I'm making or not making that hours, to how it is that we can expand our own knowledge or our own skills. And it's the same for our team too. So, where I have, we have assistants who could certainly take on certain aspects of discussions or whatnot with clients. Is if they're still learning or if they're still growing, oftentimes it's helpful for them to just be part of that process where we're meeting with clients, where it feels like, I don't really need them there. It's like, no, I want them there because I want them to be able to do this confidently on their own someday. So, that's
a training.
It's part of our growth, professional growth. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. But I think but at a certain point, you do have to take that into consideration, so that if you're having, like with Libby and Liz and I, all three on the top tier of the food chain, in terms of pay, everything else, so I have to think about that. Like, okay, is this really best, or do I need to be there? Do I always need to be there? Because I'm pretty good at delegating. I really am. I delegate everything if I could. I'm a great delegator until something hits me wrong, and then I'm like, whoa, and then I become into the micromanager from hell, because I'm like going, okay, wait a minute, you've given me a reason to doubt the process here, and so now I'm going to be all over that. But I think that but really managing that capacity is something that's very important for my firm and your firm, because you really do have to know what that capacity is, and then be constantly aware of where you're spending your it's not so much time, it's the energy. That to me is the biggest thing, y'all. I don't even say the time anymore. I'm talking about the energy, because sometimes I will spend, a certain unit of energy for something that might only equate to 15 minutes of time, but it's actually a lot of mental energy, and I may need, a nap after that. I may need a drink after that, or I may need something, right?
Jay's shaking his head
I just think,
hard.
Yeah. It's the energy is a big deal. It really is, and it kills me when people talk about time and hours and all that. Even though I understand what you're talking about in terms of the, I think that's a great example of doing a lot of specific bespoke types of things, and what that's going to, how that can be not necessarily always planned in advance on a flat fee. Although I will say that we cover a certain amount of that sort of thing. I mean, that's part of our, assessment, especially if it's a kitchen or a big bathroom or something like that, or a major remodel where we are sourcing a lot of intricate, architectural details or specialty items, like, for example, some old doors or things like that, or making a custom hood. I mean, I've spent a fair amount of time, I can tell you, in our metal fabricator's shop going over the hood and no, a little bit here. No, that's too much. A little bit less than that, when we're painting something or they're, trying to give it that old iron look, but without the cost of using old iron stuff. So I'm like, no, that's a little heavy on the old iron there, a little lighter. And it does, you're absolutely right. It does eat up a certain amount of time. And are you always going to be compensated for that? So I think that's really a good point. Okay, let's talk about some other things. Okay, let me do my shameless plug here for a minute and just ask, what is it? And I really don't even know the answer to this question, and so I'm a little nervous. How is it? Because it is a different. I mean, your firm is probably close to my size, if not bigger, or the same, or we're both in a certain level of revenue and that sort of thing. So that's all. And I think honestly, I work well with people like that, because I can relate to a lot of the things that you go through with the employees and the team. How many times have I said, I'm Michele and Jay, in our meetings. So what has been an impact for you? Do you think? What have you taken away from it that has been probably maybe the most resonating with you? Be nice.
You don't want to answer first?
Go ahead. Michele was the biggest proponent of finding a coach. I was not for it. Let's put it that way. And then we met somebody that will not be named, but and we started talking to her, and she was okay. And then Michele suggested you, and did we talk to you?
Yeah, we talked to you on the phone.
And I'm like, okay, definitely give it a shot. And it's been great ever since. I mean, it's definitely helped us focus our business and start putting processes in place to deal with a lot of these things we're dealing with.
Yeah.
For me, especially employees, I'm not used to employees, so now all of a sudden I got 5 of them, so I gotta figure out how to manage them.
It's different.
Yeah. So, I think first of all, I feel like what we needed, and when we first talked to you, we said we had 85 projects and we want fewer. We want them to be more profitable. We want to streamline our processes. We felt like we were always in project management mode and not really having an opportunity to be as creative as we'd like to be, because we were just so busy managing clients and managing people and managing work that, like, where was the time we could spend to be creative? And so I would say that just having a blueprint to start with, like, you helped us clearly define what it is we should be thinking about in terms of moving our business forward and up, right? So it just kind of solidified, here's some things you need to be thinking about. And so, who are you, Bluefoot, and what do you bring to the table, and why should clients work with you? But then also in terms of, like, how do we manage our work? Well, we're now using ClickUp, and we're not using it beautifully, but we're using it, and it's helping us considerably. And again, it's everything now is a work in process, because we're still building the plane while we're flying it. Absolutely. But now at least we have a fuselage and we have some seats. We don't have it's all kind of like, it's a process. So I feel like just having that blueprint that you gave us helped us at least to be able to prioritize what is it we could pay attention to and focus on now. Where can we bring in help to help us get better in certain areas? And then how do we want to implement some of your ideas and strategies in our own way? Like, how do we make this ours?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
And
that's important. Yeah, so that's important to take it and to make it your own.
Yeah. So while it'd be awesome if you just said, here, do this, and we wouldn't have to think about it, that would never make sense, because we are who we are. We're in a different market. We have different types of clients. We're different personalities. And so just having a framework was, like, huge for us. And we're picking and choosing what we can focus on right now. And we're not beating ourselves up. And the cool thing is just being part of the mastermind, and even just being part of the TDP. One is we were really kind of proud of how much we already knew, and either knew instinctively or were already working on, but just needed maybe more clarity. And so that was super helpful. But we also love the fact that we weren't alone. Like, we're seasoned professionals. We are not just 1 or 2 years into this industry. We have been here for a long time. And nobody taught me how to run an interior design business when I first started out 20 years ago. If I had you 20 years ago, it would have been a game changer. But I had to learn what I needed to learn the way I learned it. And I'm sure Jay can say the same thing.
I was just going to say, would you have really been as receptive to that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would have been either to some things.
I wouldn't. I don't think either one of us would have had the wisdom we have right now and the discernment for how to take our business to the next level. So it's really been a good experience from that perspective. Are we TDP rock stars? No, I don't think so. But we are happy with our progress.
Well, what defines that, though? What defines that?
Well, we would have to be in detail.
There's so much to learn.
We have to be in detailed interiors. We'd have to, it'd be like, oh yeah, we're exactly like, but we're not.
Don't think for a minute that we don't have all those issues, all the same issues too. That's how come I keep, working through everything. Is because it's
right. Well, and that's
it's like, now we have a remote employee. Now we have this. Now we have that. So there's always changes, right?
Right. And actually, I was going to say that you're never done, right? It's always going to be a process. And once you think you finally got it nailed down, this industry is so dynamic that there's no way you can remain static. You have to be adaptable. So our work will never be done, but that's okay.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think that's exactly what I'm, what I keep talking to people about too with the processes with like ClickUp is that, and of course they keep changing things, right? They keep upgrading, which is most of it's good. I know yesterday there was something going on and Stephanie both and Liz both were freaking out. And I'm like, luckily I was on job sites and doing all of that. I did not even check anything on ClickUp yesterday until late at night, and I was like, I don't know what y'all are talking about. It looks fine to me. but they were freaking out. But they do make changes, and then it sort of makes you wonder like what next to do for you. But the more I could spend all day playing with that and coming up with new things or better systems or whatever. But sometimes you just have to roll with what you got and put it to work, and then you realize like what might have to be done. And for us, because we've have a key person, really two key people, but on the client end with Liz being in New Hampshire, that has been a difference. We thought we would just roll right how we have been doing it, but we've found that we've had to make some concessions in our process, which then reflects back to how we're managing things on ClickUp and how we're really identifying, because we have a lot of projects too, and so we need to make sure, because all of a sudden, how sometimes a client is not beating down your door and you're kind of just relieved. And you're sort of going, okay, I'm just going to not really think about that right now because something is delayed on the job and I have 79 other things to do in the next hour. So I'm not going to worry about that. And then, something ramps back up. And if you haven't really paid attention to it, then now you've got all this work scheduled. And now this new thing is coming back. I think part of that is part of our industry in a way, but I am really trying to wrap my arms around a little more control with that, and also making sure that we're not suffering monetarily, because I don't want a client a job to stall out for a very long time and then me have to spend, because I can tell you right now, I won't remember diddly squatola in a month. I'm going to go like, who is that? What are they doing? I won't remember it because I have to make space in the brain for other things. So I think that's something that's really been on our radar, is being fair to everybody on the client end, but also trying to put a little more structure in a kind of a crazy business lately. And I don't want to be batted about, at the whim of things going on. We can't control COVID and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the inevitable delays with construction or whatever, and having things in place so that if things do get delayed, even if you're charging hourly, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't, because you still have to ramp back up. You have to really put your mind back into something. And that's really when hourly can help, because you can revert back to that and use that to help propel the job forward if it's been over a certain amount of time. But I think even if you were hourly from the start on it, it's like a painter. The painter is going to, if you change your mind 3 times, then you're going to pay that painter 3 times to paint that room. But do you think the painter really wants to do it 3 times? Even if he's paid? Typically not.
No.
Typically they don't.
Because we have other work to do. No. There's other work to be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That kind of thing. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so let me ask you a couple questions since we're running low on time here. Is what kind of problems do you see happening in your neck of the woods with clients, processes, subs, communication, that kind of thing? I mean, like what's the bee in your bonnet right now? Not necessarily internally, but things like I was just talking about a bee in my bonnet, trying something that's external that I'm trying to really wrap my arms around so that so the firm is not punished for things that are out of our control. What do you see? And it may be regional or it may not be, but in your area that really, with anything really, but clients, processes, communication, working with subs. What is it that you think that you've seen that might be an issue, or I think like really a bee in your bonnet, I guess.
I think on our end, it's the cost of construction. It's just gotten so ridiculous here. We go through all the processes, they come up with something, and next thing you know, we can't build it, or we're trying to cut it back. And we try to do our best to warn our clients, but no matter what we tell them, it's always a surprise when something you think is going to cost $500,000 costs $750,000.
Yeah,
it's a big jump. It's hard to adjust to that.
Yeah, even our contractors are shocked sometimes at how expensive it is to build out here right now. I mean, I think for custom design and for custom construction, whether it's remodeled or ground up, it's hard to get started on anything under 650 a square foot, right? And so even if you're building a modest home or doing a modest remodel, it just really, really, really adds up. And so I think that's been the thing. The biggest challenge is sort of establishing investment comfort levels with our clients straight up, and having an honest discussion about the level investment that they want to make. It needs to be in line with what they can have at that level of investment. So I think that it's probably no different by you, but HGTV has totally killed people's perspectives on what they can have or what they want, but they don't realize that, okay, well, if you really want that for this number, then you're going to have to find a hack, because it's not going to be done professionally with any level of skill or quality or craftsmanship for that amount of money. So, it sounds like it's that I think that the balancing act is that while you're not trying to make it about money, you still have to be honest and upfront, because the last thing you want to do is burn through a portion of your client's budget only to find out that they have to stall the project. They can't do it.
Right.
And so trying to get them to realize that is
tough.
Yeah, it's in their best interest to be honest and forthright with what they're willing to invest or able to invest straight out the gate. And not for the purposes of, oh, great, we have this much to spend, is to say, oh, great, what you want is realistic with what you have to invest in this project. So it's a different kind of conversation. And depending on the generation of the person that you're talking to, some people think it's better to hold those numbers close to their chest. It's never better to do that. It's always better to have this conversation up front. And so you have to establish a level of trust and allow them to realize that your motivation is not so you can spend their fortune. It's just to make sure that you can be the advocate for them to the best of your ability based on what they want to get. And if that means, not now, let's do this later, because what you really want, you're going to need to spend more time. Either we need to wait for things to happen in the market for prices to come down, which it never does in our area, because it's funny, even in the housing market here, we hardly ever see housing costs go down here. We're such a robust economy. We don't really see a recession here. It's very minor if we do. And I don't know if it's the same in your neck of the woods, but it's just a really robust economy here.
It's been that way for a while here. And we keep thinking that I just looked at a house that one of my other clients sent me that was $750,000. And it was, that doesn't sound like a lot in a lot of areas, but this was a small house, and it was in a let's call it an up and coming neighborhood. Okay. Let's just be kind and say it that way. And it was all white. And her comment was, she's a very eclectic client. And her comment was like, I'm shocked that they didn't paint the lawn white too, because it was obviously a developer or somebody that did. I mean, this was somebody that did this house, that built this house, spec house or something, and everything was white. And I mean, the floor, the walls, the ceiling, I mean, everything was white. And so that was her comment. And I just looked at it and I just was like, I could not believe that somebody would pay $750,000 for this house. But you know what? Someone probably will. And it is shocking to me. And I'm an investor too. We have a fairly decent sized portfolio of homes here. And I was just blown away by it. And I keep thinking to myself, there's no way that I could, we would have to go out into the sticks somewhere to buy something, because something new to add to the portfolio because it's gone up. And it is in the South. And so it is not as expensive typically, but also the income levels aren't as much. So all of that, plays into it. And I think I told you this in one of the meetings that we just had a client that is from Washington, somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, that bought a house here. And it's like interesting to talk to them about it, but they don't seem to be unfazed by cost. I mean, they really don't. I mean, I think that they're very concerned about cost too. And they were shocked that they had to replace the roof because they couldn't get insurance if they didn't. And that's a big deal here, a very big deal, because insurance is right up there. Our property taxes are high too. But then of course we don't have a state income tax. So that, that sort of balances things out in general. But yeah, I agree with you that is probably one of the biggest challenges I think a lot of us are facing is getting into a job, especially a new build or a remodel, and then having it not be within reach. I think that people have to be able to have a pretty good idea of what it's going to cost. And I am really with you on making sure. And I don't really have a problem with clients not divulging a budget to us. I think we put out forth a good level of trust, and I haven't had that issue. But I do think the unrealistic part of it is a big deal. And I think sometimes they don't realize that certain smaller things that don't seem to a client to be a big deal to do, just slap something on that wall like this, or just slap this, or why is a level 10 finish so it's more expensive than doing an orange peel, or things like that. They don't always relate. They don't always understand that part of it, and that's when it gets into a sticky part, because you're in the middle of the job typically, and it's not, they're now wanting to upgrade this or change that, and they really don't understand. And I will tell you too that I have come to a new understanding or appreciation really of change orders and having that, because I remember building a house 20 plus years ago and thinking, it's no big deal, let's just change this. This is really before I was, so I guess maybe it was 25, 26, 27 years ago. Everything's 20 years ago to me. Everything I've done is 20 years. But it not being that big of a deal. Yeah. But I mean, think about it though for a minute. You think about it, it's that it's you're now I feel like, what? A change order is a big deal because there's such a domino effect. And especially in the architecture part of it. Like they change one thing and then all of a sudden Jay's got to go back and say, they think it's going to take an hour to make this one change, right? But really it's going to take 5 or 6 hours because you have to follow it through to see where the dominoes actually land. And I think that's one of those things
or a week if it needs structural
and it also pushes back the timeline, and then that pushes back the cabinet maker, for example, because he's got another job going on. And I don't know that clients always understand that. Like, why isn't my guy here? Well, okay, so you made this change and that change and this change, and that threw our schedule off. And so that's why he's not here, because he has to work. I mean, subs have to work. They don't have typically have this big slush fund of money, so they can just sit around waiting for somebody to need them when the thing is scheduled. So scheduling is a big deal in our world, is really, whether it's the contractor's schedule or whether it's our schedule or whatever the case may be. Another question I wanted to ask you that I think would be important to people listening is, I feel like to me, one of the things that interested me to work with you guys is because I think it's such a great business model. I really do. I mean, if Evo had stayed here, I can't tell you that we wouldn't have partnered, in the fullest way, because I think we would have. ultimately done that and combined the businesses in some way or another, or him coming into it, he loves to fish, so he'd probably be very happy just to have a job and go do his job and then leave. But I've always think it's great. Do you think that is like really adding to your, I mean, obviously it adds to your value, but if somebody else was thinking about that, if they were thinking about it and saying, hey, you know what, I've got this level of business, not somebody working out of their garage that's, doing $150,000 a year or something, but somebody that's got a designer that has some wherewithal, or an architect, do you feel like that is really a good move for people? I mean, after having done it for 3 years, I mean, what's your advice to people, or how do you feel about that in terms of how stable, in my opinion, you've got a very stable business model. You are always going to have work. I feel like that is always going to be there. You might not always be making, as much money as you want or whatever. I mean, things may go up and down, but I feel like it's a very stable business model. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's definitely helped us. I mean, I've met lots of potential clients and, as an architect, and then I tell them, my partner is an interior designer, and then all of a sudden they perk up even more. And I think that probably sold a couple jobs for us. Also, we tell them, we can supply cabinets and furniture, and it really gets their interest going, kind of a whole package deal. I mean, the only thing that would make it perfect is if we had a structural engineer on board, and then we would do the whole package, and we would never have to use an outside consultant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel, just building on what he said, is, just letting people know that we're not just a one-stop shop, but we are accustomed to collaborating, and we each bring different strengths to the table, and that we have a team behind us. It's not just Jay, it's not just me, but there's a team behind us. So, we try to highlight that when we're discussing why Bluefoot Architecture and Design with the client when they call in. And we're doing a qualifying call with them. And we still do them ourselves. We don't generally delegate those to one of our design assistants. We still do those ourselves, and sometimes we'll do them together. And I think that kind of establishes with future clients that we are a team, and they get a good sense for who we are and what our personalities are like.
Obviously, there's challenges with that, with blending companies. I've worked with a couple of designers where I've helped them unblend their little work family, and over the years, and that's always challenging too. But I think that if you are, I mean, what would be the thing that you say? Because really, we got mostly designers listening here. Although I do know there's a bunch of architects that I didn't know about that are listening to, that have to be in a different state that I know. But what would you have them look for in a partner in this way? Like what is their love match going to be, Michele, in terms of looking? Because let's face it, there's a lot of architects that are like surgeons, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of ego, involved there. There's an ego involved in designers too. I mean, without a doubt. But I think that it's, of course, I'm saying this as a designer, that there is a certain amount of ego there. But that's going to be, that's usually a good thing. Like, I want my surgeon to be egotistical, quite frankly. I like that they're very confident in themselves. I like that. But I mean, what would be the sweet spot?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, it took me a while to come around to the idea of being a formal partner with Jay. I think he had decided that's what he wanted long before I did. And so I think it's important to maybe work with an architect. Think about it. You call Liz your work wife. I'm Jay's work wife. He's my work husband. And first and foremost, there has to be a respect. So you talk about egos, and that, both designers and architects can have egos, which is absolutely true. But if there's no respect for the other's craft and the other's skill set, then it's not going to work, period. You have to be able to disagree, and you have to establish how you get to disagree and talk about what that might look like. And so, because you should be able to work through those. And like I said, I think they are to our clients' benefit when we do disagree respectfully. It brings a lot of great ideas to our clients. So you have to be able to disagree. But ultimately,
you told them that.
And
tell them that too, though.
And exactly. And then, like you said,
tell the clients what I'm saying. Make sure you make that a thing. You know what I'm saying? It's not just that we talk about it here, but actually express that, because that is a value. That's a value that has value points in my mind. And so you want to talk about that. And make sure the clients know that.
Yeah. And then the third is just acknowledging what your lane is. And not to say that I never dabble in space planning with Jay. But I'm hungry to learn from him. And I think he's hungry to learn from me. And so, we get to be in a profession that is in an industry that is constantly changing and evolving. So we get to be lifelong learners, which is, for me, that's like a total plus for me, because that's who I am at my core anyway. But if you have those things where you can learn from each other, you can respect one another, you can disagree with one another, you can have fun creatively, work together on space plans, work together on the interior aesthetics, and get to understand each other's strengths, and hopefully they complement each other, and that you're not just the same, because Jay and I we are not the same. We like different things, but at the same time, we appreciate all of it. So I think if you are an interior designer and you're looking to partner with an architect, look for those things, because you're going to be working a lot with this person, and you have to feel 1000% confident and believe there's truth in every morsel of your language, that this is a partnership that's going to benefit you, our client, like no other partnership. You can hire a different architect, and I've worked with other architects, and I occasionally still do. Jay works with other interior designers occasionally, especially if some of the architectural clients he has already have an interior designer that they've already established a relationship with. We're totally fine with that. But it's not as good as when they're a partnership. And so, use that to your advantage.
As good as Michele is, or as good as I think I am, we get stuck sometimes, and it's good to have another person to bounce an idea off of, or get her input, or she gets my input, and it works out really well.
That's what I love about it. I mean, that's what I love about the whole team. I mean, I'm doing a new build right now with Evo, and we're just feeding off of each other, really. I mean, we're supposed to have a meeting today, actually, and then some other things happened on a different job that we're working on, and so I had to be there all morning. But I love that. I mean, that's kind of, I think, what you said about lifelong learner, Michele, is how I feel too, because to me it keeps us relevant, and you're constantly striving for something. And so when you think like the process is going to be done, or everything is going to be situated, or finally I have it all figured out how my ClickUp is going to be perfect or whatever, then something's going to happen to make you change, and then you have to learn about something new or whatever. I mean, all those things I think are part of it. And if you don't have that love of learning, then I don't think this is a long-term career. And maybe in a lot of fields these days, if you don't have my husband has been doing AI training. He's been doing AI training because they have me because he works for Booz Allen, and he's got him doing AI training, and he's like, oh boy, this AI training. He goes, but I don't want to be this AI. I manage people. I want to manage people. That's what I do. That's his forte and all that. He does not want to do that sort of thing, and I think that's fair that not everybody is going to want to do it. But I think it's important to learn about any of it, any of the things that are going on, right?
Agreed.
I think that's important. Did you guys go into, you've talked about the practical parts and the emotional parts kind of partnering together, but did you guys go and get a contract together to work together? I mean, do you have a formal agreement for your firm? Is that okay to ask? Okay.
We even have a divorce clause.
I love that.
No, we do. We have a partnership agreement. I mean, we went through the entire full process of a formal partnership.
I would have expected you to, because
what'll happen, and like what happens in the case of my demise or his demise or cognitive decline or whatever. It's a total formal partnership.
You really went into it.
Honestly, it's really for the benefit of not just the company but each other, right? It protects our company, it protects our clients and our employees and ourselves. And if you're unwilling to do that, then you're not really serious. You know what I mean? It could get really, really messy, or you can be really clear, because that whole process of forming that partnership and creating the partnership agreement allowed us to discuss some of the things where we were in disagreement, where we weren't comfortable. It helped us realize the types of things we weren't comfortable talking about, and talking about them anyway. And so if you can't get through that communication, because it is hard, we had an attorney kind of walk us through it, and then gave us saying it's a hard thing to do. If you can't do that, you have no business forming you have no business being a partnership. partnerships fail more times than not. And so if you can't get through that, then you have no business going through it at all.
Right. And get it all out. Get it all out now. Get it out the front. Let's find out let's get all the bodies out and unbury them and try to figure out like the what ifs up front so that you don't have to worry about it later if something goes wrong.
And truthfully, when we first did this, it was 3 years ago. And it's probably time we look at it again because we didn't know what we didn't know 3 years ago.
Is there something you're not telling?
No, I'm not telling you. Yeah, but it should be. Really. It should be looked at. Because there's things we want to do. We've started saving money and because we want to invest capital in other enterprises and stuff. So, these are things that need to be living, breathing documents that should get reviewed occasionally. And again, if we can't talk about these things and how we might have changed our view on certain things, then we have no business being in a relationship like this.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's no different than having a contract with a client or anything else. I mean, you've got to have the what ifs there, and again, some of it is not a what if we get mad at each other. It's more of like what happens if somebody's incapacitated, or what happens if this happens or that happens, or all of a sudden someone moves to a different state, or they're doing things like that. I mean, you have to really beat the bushes, I think, to get. Again, just like with a contract with a client, I mean, how many times have we all over the years thought, oh, well, I'm going to add that to my contract next year. I mean, it's just because things happen and you don't think about it. But if you really go through that process up front, then you're going to be more likely to have a better agreement.
Succeed.
And also less stress, if something, God forbid, doesn't come out right. Okay, so I got to ask this because this is something Stephanie told me I had to ask, and I don't even remember this. But she said that you mentioned, Michele, a while back that the reason why you chose the design paradigm was because you felt like I was where you wanted to be in a year. What did you mean by that? That was I was dying to ask you that before or something, and then Stephanie said, no, you have to wait to the podcast. You have to wait. She would have like my whole life be a podcast if she could.
Oh,
She's a
boy.
slave driver, I'm telling you. Yeah, she really is. But what was that? I don't remember. I think it's interesting to think about it, not from the design paradigm point of view, but more just what was that meaning? Just like more settled, or not settled, but more like where everything is like running on all 12 cylinders, or I don't know. I don't even know if you remember that comment.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of it is being more diverse. I mean, selling other things like cabinets and furniture. Yeah, it's all new to us.
Yeah, we hadn't been doing that.
And you seem to do it so easily and so well. So I've been
doing it for a while, but I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, easily and well. Now you just. I'm now going to have like some text message on my phone, like as soon as we get off here saying something bad's happened or whatever. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
I mean, it does. It's a lot of work.
What happens every year?
You guys have done it the right way, though. You guys have done it the right way, by investigating and all that. So, I mean, tell me about that, Michele, because that's kind of a cool thing to talk about.
Well,
like what you guys have done in terms of selling your cabinetry and all that.
Yeah, we have great relationships with full custom cabinet builders that build incredible pieces of furniture. But at the same time, not all of our clients want or need that level of bespokeness. And so we started looking for manufacturers that we could become dealers for. And we settled on a manufacturer of cabinetry in Canada that has 2 levels of cabinets. They're really well made. Our contractors have been very pleased with the quality and the ease of installation of these cabinets thus far. They've been a great company to work with. For us, it was about diversifying and having other areas of profit that weren't just dependent on our time. So, it's like if we're trading dollars for hours, that's not a good model, which is where one of the ideas of the flat fee also comes into play. But also, there are things where we know we can get good profit margin on, and cabinets are one of them. And so we invested the time and the energy and money into establishing a dealership with the cabinet line, and then kind of dipping our toe back into furnishings, just working with clients. I did a lot of furniture, but through a local showroom. So where our clients would get everything at a certain price and I would get a small commission, and then they would get the headache of managing it. But it really just didn't feel like I felt like that level of designer that I thought we want to be doesn't do that. I don't want to take my clients to a retail showroom. I want them to I want them to have other
absolutely
options.
not.
So we're doing that
how's it
now,
work,
and
though?
we're working through relationships
how's it going?
with. It's
Doing
going well.
Yeah. I mean, are you going happy? But I mean, are you? Is this a good decision, or you know, are you thinking that you're trading? I guess you said it. You know,
No,
that you have to analyze
I feel
whether
like
you're trading time for margin.
No, I feel like it's a good decision. I feel like the upside is definitely there. And the more we do it, the better and more effective and more efficient we're going to be at it. The greater leverage we'll have for negotiating things like white glove delivery and stuff like that. So I don't think we're concerned about it at all. We actually are running out of space in our tiny little showroom. And part of our long-term strategy is what other revenue streams are out there available to us in terms of like owning our own real estate, having our own facility, our showroom that we can receive in, that we can have our offices in, et cetera. That's in the horizon. It's probably in the 3-year horizon, but it's in the horizon nonetheless. And then eventually, I think, you know, and this is sort of an issue with our areas, finding another architect and interior designer that are more junior that we can bring in and then groom them to be partners, and then hopefully eventually take over Bluefoot Architecture and Design in terms of like passing that torch, but having that
you're such a planner.
Exit strategy. Well, yeah.
Yeah, you're such a planner. I love that. Because
It's
you've talked about this
it's a dream.
since day one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I think we talked about the fact that I own, you know, the campus, I guess, whatever we're going to call it,
Yes.
the 3 buildings that are on the property that I own was a big deal. And then the shop before that, there was 2 smaller ones, and I owned those, and now they're paid off, and so they're just cash flow, which is really kind of awesome. And then those other properties that property is probably worth I would say double of what I paid for it, and then part of that's almost paid off. So it is that part of the business, I think, is something people don't always think about, is the what your company can do, because my company owns that. You know, it's not, I don't own that property and rent it to myself just because of sales tax, really. And I'm an S corp, so it's not going to matter for any other reason. But it is in some states it might be better for you to own it and rent it to your business. But it makes my business a lot more attractive too. If I were to sell it one day, I probably won't, because my daughter is in the business with me, and I don't see that happening. But you never know. You never know. Never say never. But I think that is something that people don't always think about when they are at our stage of the game, Michele, is like, what else can this look like? You know, what else could it be? And buying property and owning your own place to have your studio or a shop or a warehouse. Like, I've always wanted a warehouse, and Liz has never let me, and now they're too dang expensive to have one. But that's something that's kind of important that I don't think people always think about. It's certainly not. And I was really intrigued by that, because you've talked about that from day one. From your very first assessment, you guys talked about that, about putting money away for other things from a company perspective, not just individually. Like you're already such a team, because you're thinking that way. It's not just like, well, we both want to save a lot of money and put it aside. You were talking about that from the very beginning about wanting to do that. And that to me was intriguing to me, to work with people that really are thinking that far ahead, because that's always been something really important to me. I mean, my dad's always invest in real estate, invest, that kind of thing as soon as you can. So I don't know that everybody always considers that. So that's kind of cool. We're down to the last little bit and our damn good truth for today. Think about the who in your business. Who can you partner with to serve your shared clientele better? And it doesn't always mean it has to be an official partnership, although that can be great. But sometimes this power of a partnership cannot be beat if you are the right fit. And that's definitely an important thing to think about. It's not dissimilar to being married, for sure. I think that's very true. There's going to be ups and downs, very, very much so, right? And I think it's key to define the structure, and then you both agree to it. You know, you define the structure of how this is going to work, where everyone's going to go, and then you both are agreeing to it until it's not working, and then you can agree to disagree, and then you work on it again. And I think also never going home mad. That's always been something that Liz and I have thought about. You know, that she knows that she might as well just go ahead and talk it out with me, because at some point I am going to be like, no, oh no, we're not going to bed mad, because you're not supposed to go to bed mad. And so that's not what's going to happen. So I think that's kind of a key thing there. And some of the benefits of having someone who gets it in the day-to-day running of a firm is really, I think in our industry, can be the lifeline to your sanity. I mean, it really can. Just what Liz and I say about it, y'all, is that who's in the boat with us? Who is in the boat with us? And sometimes we say this to our team too. Who's in the boat with us? Like we need you to, we don't feel like you're in the boat with us. If we say that to somebody, they know that that's a serious thing, because we need them to be in the boat with us on that. And that's the way that both of us feel like. And despite Liz and I not always agreeing, we always can work through a problem to a good conclusion, always for the benefit of the client if it's a disagreement from a design perspective. I think this is what's essential to having a really strong partnership, or even just a strong right-hand person. I think it's really important that way. So thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate you guys being here and talking about this. I think we could talk for a while, because I'm thinking all kinds of questions that I just personally want to know. So you may get a long email later. But thanks for joining us, everybody in the audience. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing your story with us. We just absolutely love to hear it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.
Bye, y'all.
Until next time, stay bold, stay inspired, and keep embracing your bag girl spirit. If you've enjoyed today's show, head over to join the community at damngooddesigner.com to continue the conversation and sign up for our newsletter.